Hi, we're going to jump right in, get started on a presentation on leaf decomposition. To start, the basic premise, we're going to watch the decompositional process of leaves in water. I just chose a few leaves from my current habitation space outdoors. There was a few fallen leaves from a tree, and I grabbed a couple off of a buckthorn plant. Buckthorn is invasive, so I didn't think it would be too much of a detriment. The materials, two buckthorn leaves, two cherry leaves, they had fallen, and it was a little premature. They were spotted, so there may have been some sort of disease affecting them, but they were the leaves that I chose. And it's a special kind of cherry. There are obviously a number of different species of cherry trees. Um, I had four bottles and two with lids. So the experiment was two leaves, um, and one would be in a bottle with a lid, and one would not for each species of tree leaf. So this is kind of what it looked like. The basic model here. We've got the ones without, and we've got the ones with on the ends here with the lids here. You can see this was somewhat early in the decompositional process. You can see these ones were already and discolored. These were the cherry leaves. They were a little bit larger versus buckthorn, which were a little bit smaller. They had longer stems and which was helpful for identification later because that did actually get more difficult with the decompositional process. They already were color changing, and you'll see that in more of the photos, but this is kind of how they were stationed, what they looked like to start with. But this was a few days in. You can see the water is already filling with some of the tannins, some of the discoloration because of the decompositional process, because the leaves were already changing colors and were already going, versus these ones were green. You can still see a little bit they're green. See, they were difficult to see with the grooves in the bottle. So if I were to do this again, finding different bottles might be beneficial with less grooves and things bending the light and potentially affecting the photos that were taken. The duration of the project was July 18th to the present. The last photo was taken on 4/16/26. I actually did take some today, so that is incorrect. I added them last minute, so the last ones were taken on April 26th, 2026. So 10 days after this um, states, just because I wanted to keep it fresh, and I realized that I had a little bit of space on the presentation, and I wanted to fill it. And there's the experiment is still going, just because it's not quite a year. It's not been a year yet, and I have no reason to remove it before the year is out, so might as well keep it going. But it is Earth Month now, and so it makes sense to do the presentation now, at least to get a solid chunk of it in. Note the cherry leaves were orange and autumnal at the start, while the buckthorn leaves were green. You can see that in these photos, the starting photos, and then these were from the 4/16. So the ones that I did not take today, but the ones prior, 10 days prior. Um, so you can see they started off as this marbled color in July of last year. Again, these ones are longer. These ones are just pure green, very healthy looking, shorter stem here, very small. And if we look down here, it is from the 10 days ago. The cherry leaf open. The open just means that it is not lidded. You can see the lid in this photo specifically. So that's the closed. Um, and this is open. A lot of the open ones are taken straight down into the bottle just for, it was easier to take those photos versus the closed ones because you couldn't go from the top. Or rather, I could have removed the lid. I don't know how that would have affected decompositional process. That might be a different way to do the experiment moving forward. If I want to take photos straight down, looking just like this, at the ones that are closed, I could have removed the cap and then looked in, taken the photo, and then replaced the cap, but there would have been some of that oxygen exposure. And I don't know how that would have really changed it, if it would have or would it would not have. But I just left it. And so a lot of the photos that are closed are from the side. And so that is where the shape of the bottle can kind of be a detriment to the photos that were taken. And I do apologize for that, but you can still see quite a bit through the bottle. So this, you can see, this is the cherry leaf open. This is pretty much, it's like a fine web of white fibrous material. All of the color is gone. And so that's pretty notable, just having it be open. It's a huge difference from the beginning, and also a very large difference from the cherry leaf that was closed, because this one is still, it's got the brown, it's got quite a bit of the brown. It's still spotted, and it looks almost the exact same as it was within the first few weeks of, you'll see the photos. This is just a basic summary to get us started, but it's still got the same colorations of the brown, the spots. So that's actually really interesting, just because it seems to not really change that much in that water for an extended period of time, versus this is just like essentially like the veins, from the plant kind of holding the shape together. And it looks like it did get folded over. Looks like there are two. I haven't taken it out of the bottle, put it under a microscope yet. That is the hope. And so maybe I can do an additional video, a supplemental video for this experiment, once that is um, factored in, just as a final. Maybe we'll do that after the year is up, the 7/18/2026. But we'll look at that under the microscope. And this is just the process that it kind of went through. I did not take photos on a very strict schedule for this. It was, every week or so. Sometimes it was every couple of days. Sometimes it was maybe 2 weeks. It was just a very casual, just as the progression goes. But I did take it regularly, the photos. And so see, this one is 7/18, the next one's 7/26, 8/12, 8/17. So that's only 5 days. And so it is different. It does fluctuate, but I think that it is still fairly comprehensive in the um, process there. Again, the photos um, we're not all from the same angles, and so that is, that could affect the interpretations as well. But let's just take a look here. This is the cherry leaf open. So this one was open to the oxygen almost immediately the next week. It went from this brilliant, vibrant yellow and green to this rust orange color. And then immediately it it turned to this brown color, from this orange and a little bit of green tinges here to the brown, some spots here, brown, some spots here, and then it starts to get a little more translucent. Even, that's like a month and a half. It starts to go see-through with the open to the air, versus, and then it even gets more see-through here, just a week after. So but of course, there was no specific time of day either, too. So that could also be a difference of the backdrop of the photo. Like here, you can see I have a bright pink pair of pants, and so you can see that is the backdrop for this photo. That could factor in as to what colors are really showing in the photos. That's another factor to think of next time, because that does change how the leaves are interpreted, perhaps. different times of day, of course. And you can see that it's actually kind of cool once we get into the later months, just how the sun changes as well, how the sun is reflecting in overcast skies versus the bright sunshine, and how the leaves look going from winter into spring. And, so that I think that you track all of that when you are doing experiments like this. So that's actually kind of cool too. Um, but we've got this one is already, already solidly decomposing. And but we already knew that from this first page, the cherry leaf open, it's almost, it's almost mush, versus the buckthorn open is mush, essentially. It's completely disintegrated on this. And so there was a little bit of confusion too. I did have the bottles labeled, I should say. The bottles were labeled with um, a material that did not stay longitudinally, and they did get shuffled around winter. They were shoveled off of the patio where they were staying, and so I did have to collect them from a snowbank, and then I moved them off to the side. And so were no longer in the order, and the labels were gone. So that made it incredibly difficult to ascertain specifically, what is going on. There was some confusion, and I did make note too with with that combined with the water being frozen, it really made it very, very difficult to see the leaves and to identify the leaves. So I am extrapolating that this is the buckthorn. I have for the cherry leaf, I had to see there's a um, detritus. It looks to be a dead bug. And I know that in the like last fall, the cherry leaf open got a few bees that ended up in the bottle and then began to disintegrate. And we'll actually get to see them disintegrating kind of in the background of these photos. But that helped with the identification process. So there were a lot of different ways that this experiment could have been done differently, specifically because it was just tough to identify and tough to ascertain. So I am not actually even 100% sure that this is the cherry leaf, except for the dead bug that you can kind of see in the background here. And that was kind of the big tell, trying to um, identify as, with the winter and just shuffling through the photos. So I do want to be overt and open about that. Um, but they are both open and they are mush. This one's pure mush. It did not maintain a structure. This one has more structure, and it does look like it's just a fine net or a fine web of the vein structures of the leaf. So that's very interesting. This one is kind of a little ball. It got folded at some point during the freezing thawing. I'm sure something happened and it was no longer up, out like this. And so it's just a little ball, kind of brown in the corner. It's tough to see in this photo. And that was another thing I realized looking at my photos after the fact. Yeah, I did, kind of wish that I had been more mindful about the photos that I had taken. I should have been more stubborn about getting the best angles possible, because this, you can hardly see it. It's right here. But with the bends in the bottle and the lighting, it's very difficult to tell. But you can see it right there. And the bends of the bottle, it's, you can see it, but I would want to do it differently moving forward. So. But anyway, you can see that this one does turn to pretty much mush. This one also does turn to mush. So this one is green, green. It kind of follows a similar timetable of just a few, a few weeks here where it really does change color. And then it really does go down to a brown. There is a bug here. I think that one might have been still alive. That fly there. And I do not remember that specific photo, so I cannot verify if that bug does I think that it flew away because I don't remember seeing evidence of it later on, but there were a couple bees also. It's tough to say, honestly, which is why it is um, uh, again a flaw of the experiment. You're always going to find, flaws to experiments, and so this one is not an exception to that rule. Um, but so we have green, green, some brown, green, brown, green, brown, brown, and it was very quick how it just turned right to brown there. This starts to look the same consistently, the same brown. The buckthorn closed, green, green, green. You can start to see there's some black kind of penetrating that green there. There is also a little bit of discoloration here as it's now more brown than green, and then brown. Then we can see again more the leaves becoming more and more translucent. We've got more of this orangish color, this bright orange color with the discoloration. It looks more brown in this, depending on the lighting, of course. Um, Trying to get the best angle, and of course, the details that the camera picked up, the level of focus did also vary. But kind of see it as it goes. This, like I said, maintains the same color for an exceptional amount of time. Buckthorn open. You can see the vein structure. It's got a little more color right at the tip of the stem, and that could be telling of the nutrients and leaf structures in general, how it is maintaining their at least this particular type of leaf. You don't really see the same necessarily on this, a little bit more brown here at the top, but not to the same extent as on the buckthorn. And I wonder if that is because this had fallen naturally in its diseased state. And these ones I plucked directly off the plant. But these ones, the buckthorn closed again, also does not differ exceptionally. It does stay this brown color. And I know that is difficult to see because I believe you can see this, the little bar at the bottom tracking our progress. And I do apologize for that as well. But we've got the slow translucence. You can see the vibrant oranges of the decomposition, as well as um, the pale beiges for September through October essentially. Then November almost through December. We do have snow at the very end of November here, but you can kind of see not too much has changed. It's still translucent. We had a little bit of ice on this one, so that fogged up the leaf, and you can see already it's very difficult to kind of see the specific details. And I did have to be conscientious and kind of guess a little bit. There is a spider in this one, and that spider does have a recurring role in some of these photos. And I again will apologize because I don't remember that spider being there. And I don't know, I will say I don't know if other people have been in the files. And so I will again articulate that there is a chance that some of these were subject to others' perusal and potential manipulation. I cannot say that the files were secured 100%. So, but there is a spider in this photo, and you will see it throughout some of the other photos as well. But we've got this, and they did get buried in the snow. And I decided that I didn't want to um, dig them out of the snow specifically for photographing. And so I left them in the snow, and that did cut down on the amount of data that I have. But it wasn't, even though it did snow, it wasn't, they weren't buried in snow the entire time. So we did get winter photos, and they will be present in this presentation. Um, but just letting you know, these again remain fairly similar. The cherry leaf closed, buckthorn closed, still that brown color, distinctive vein structures. These are still the same orange and kind of beigey peachy color. Um, and we got the orange and beigey pinky color there too. Snow, snow still buried. Still under the snow. And then we did get photos here, and this is where it started to become more and more difficult to ascertain, especially with the cherry leaf open and the buckthorn open, because they were both exactly the same colors at this point, and the ice was not transparent, which that is common for ice to have this coloration to it. And um, so it was that made it exceptionally difficult to tell the difference between the two of them. And I again will apologize and say that there may be some confusion, but also due to the photos, I don't know that it really detracts necessarily from the science per se if there's a little bit of confusion here, just because you can't really see much anyway. And so I felt like the color here and the ice, I felt safe making an educated guess. Again, I tried to look for tells like the long stem means cherry leaf versus the buckthorn had the shorter stems. Um, and later I ended up looking, this one was closer to the surface. The buckthorn open was closer to the surface. The stem isn't there. And so kind of looking at those tells and trying to figure it out with that. But there could have been some mistakes made, again, because they are one photo in hundreds of photos, and they still felt representative in the color and in the ice factor. I felt comfortable being potentially an error in my process here of putting these on the presentation. If you can tell and I am incorrect, or if let me know not to be snarky. um, but there, I will just say there may have been some mistakes made, but I do feel like this is still fairly representative in the deterioration um, process, marking that and making note of that. So again, very difficult to see with the ice there. They are again buried in snow, and they're up to almost the top, so seeing the leaves not as likely. This also, a little more of it was shown, and I don't know why I did not photograph those per se. This one, we started to get them again, and I almost didn't even upload these photos to the presentation because they were so difficult to tell. But I was going to keep them on the presentation where these aren't all of the photos. I've got many more photos for each date. Not all of them. Some of them I did just have the four specifically, but if I felt like I wanted to get more angles and, if that felt like something that was worth doing that particular week, then I did take more photos. And so this is not the full representation of all of the photos I took. Um, but I almost didn't put these on here just because I said, this isn't science. This isn't, you can't tell. You cannot tell with this, with the ice. there's orange with with the not, you can't see through the ice. But I did end up putting it on the presentation anyway, just because I didn't, I thought, you know what, I'll just let them know. And it's very human, and I think it is largely understandable that you just can't tell. You can't see it. You can't see the details. Here's that spider. Um, there's a little bit, something happened. I don't know what happened. And that is something that is interesting to me, because if you look at this photo and you don't see it in a lot of the other photos, you see, because you see like orange here, the ice started to become indiscernible, but there's like something happened that the leaf is mostly up here, but there's this downward trail, and then I think that is the bees, the bodies of the dead bees, but something happened that there's this trail of decompositional substance. I don't know what it is. It might be, I don't know what it is, but um, this had it very briefly. Um, and so I thought that that was very intriguing and confusing. The other leaf, I did not see that. But again, the long stem, just brown, long stem, brown shadow, long stem, brownish shadow. Um, this one, orange stem, kind of close to the top, or orange and negligible stem, buckthorn, um, orange. This one was exceptionally difficult, and this one was pure guesswork of the orange here, presuming that it wasn't this one, because of the shape, and it looks a little more brownish maybe than the than orange here, but this one I did have to guess on. So, um, and this, you can't even see the leaf in this photo. So it was just that kind of day, I guess. But buckthorn closed. You have the brown here. It looks almost identical to what it was in the fall. And then not, you can't really see much of anything in the bottom ones there. Ice, more frozen, and it does say at the top, these ones are just straight frozen. Some of them had some thaw and some ice. Um, and some of the ice was easier to see into, like this one does stay frozen, and you can see more of the leaves. There's just like a difficult space, right in the middle there that you can't see through for that one. But getting ahead of ourselves, this is going into February. The buckthorn close is still brown, 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 still brown, maybe a slightly different color brown, going more towards the more translucent brown colors. This one, again, it looks trailing in that it could potentially be the cherry leaf if and obviously if you look here, the cherry leaf photos that I've got here, um, you can't tell. You can't see a leaf in this one. You can see that there is orange in this one. Um, and that's it. So this one does look more trailing. It could have been up here. I think that the thought process here was um, closer. Gosh, no, I'm not 100% sure. um, was closer to the surface, versus this one. Looking at the other photos, I think it looked like the cherry leaf was pushed down farther from the surface, and I think these ones were closer to the surface, but it also is kind of trailing in orange. Um, and so that again could be mistaken, could need to swap them around. Um, there is darkness up at the top, which would not be indicative of the darkness of the bees at the bottom. So that's kind of a tricky part there. But this is essentially what the pictures look like. So it was difficult to ascertain. Could be mistaken on these ones again too. Looking at the depth of the leaf in the bottle versus the other photos, which not all of the photos are on this presentation. So try did best judgment it, and I could be wrong on it because it does look trailing down, which might be more reminiscent of the cherry leaf with the that trail that I pointed out earlier. So, not sure yet. This photo, literally, you can just see like the black cloud. So I'm presuming that that was the bees in the bottom here. You can see the bees here, and it has its own little white cloud of material there. And I don't know if how much of that came from the bees and how much came from the leaf and how much of that was trailing down. If we didn't have that same situation with the buckthorn with the trail of color, unless we did, and that's this. With that, and there may have been more thaws in between. I'm not sure because it went from this orangey color on 2-9 to pretty much translucent with a little bit of orange on 214 here. Um, but this, yeah, it's so if this got frozen again, how on earth are you going to see that if the ice is this color, you know? So that's why presuming that is the bee bodies and it is this white color maybe at that point, but why would it be that white color on this one if it's orange still on this one? It's tough to say, but again, brown, hard to discern, looks brown and long. So presuming it is this one. This one is the brown long and has the long stem. So that one, cherry leaf glows the exact same color as it was in the fall. But we have the leaf here. It does look like this leaf got folded over and it is that white slash translucent. Here we've got B detritus down in the corner. This, um, this was taken from the bottom. This was taken from the top. Hence the difference there. This again is frozen again at the end of February. So it was thawed here very briefly. I did actually one of they both got knocked over, and that's a note here. I put snow in since the water got dumped out. The open ones tipped on their sides, maybe due to wind or passing animals, birds. But they did tip on their sides, and the water was pretty much gone. There was a very small amount, and so I thought that that wasn't necessarily as organic with the experiment that I was setting out to do. So I did end up putting snow in. I thought that snow would be more organic because it did collect snow, no doubt, over the winter because they were open bottles and it did snow. So I did put some snow that was on the side in as a supplemental water source. So that way they would still have water after being dumped because they had water at the beginning of the experiment and the point was the water in the experiment. So I did put snow in at that point. But this photo was taken from the bottom, which is why it looks different. It looks very different from what it was there. The bees, translucent. It doesn't look that much different from that point on, except the detritus in the bottom starts to take on this greenish tinge. But I don't know if or how that could be nitrogen associated with the deterioration process of the leaves or of the bugs, since it is warming up and everything's melted now, so that could be nutrients in the water but or whatever microbiotic um whatever we've got going in the microbiome there. Stumbling over my words there, sorry. But we've got that here, the light leaves and the dead bugs. We've got the brown that appears to be never changing after that original change from the orange green to the brown. The buckthorn open, it did start to deteriorate even more. And you can see that it is essentially mush moving into the end of March here. This buckthorn leaf closed is brown. It does look like it started to kind of bend here. And then it's kind of in like a ball shape here. And some of the photos, like I said, very difficult. I don't know what made it crinkle into that ball shape. I don't know what forces it could have. But these were in the backyard as well. And I know that I do have mischievous, nosy neighbors too. So I don't know if they took it upon themselves to ball it up as an interesting nuance, just to see what happens um, if they're also interested in science. Um, so, um, but I'm not sure. I've mentioned them in a previous presentation as well. If they if they get into my files too, I'm not sure, um, but we do have that sort of relationship. Anyway, it's brown and difficult to photograph. This one's not a great photo. But of course, you can probably see this bar here of the 1416, so it's difficult to see there anyway. Um, Moving into the next one, we also have that green here in the bottom, the green here in the bottom, more translucent. You can see green in the leaf now too. So we do have um, that growth in the leaf as well. And this was where the presentation was going to end, and I thought, no, I'm just going to take some quick photos from today. And so now the water here is looking more foggy as well, with some potential um, growth. Um, there as well, but you can see particulates along the bottom here, and it is pretty well mush at that point. Still brown as ever, still brown as ever. I will say the buckthorn that got closed up does show some more deterioration than this one. But of course, if it was opened or if it was balled up, there is like a cloud of kind of white around it, and I don't know um, if that is some of the like the fibrous um, materials, cellulosic materials, or if that is like part of the microbiome and the deterioration process. It's difficult to see in the photo, but looking at it in person, there is a little bit of a cloud of white kind of around the ball of the brown leaf there. So that is kind of how that experiment went down. So, and again, this isn't the full year, but it is Earth Month, and so wrapping it up a little early, and I can always add more of the photos in to tie off the full year. It took a decent amount of time to get every photo onto this presentation. I could have just showed you the other presentation with all of the photos, and maybe I can do another little recap video with those on the presentation where I keep all of the photos, because again, these are not all of the photos of each leaf. These are just the best ones that I felt were the most representative and that captured the leaves at the best angles for the sake of this presentation as well. So these are not all the photos. Maybe I can do a supplemental with the year end, but the bottles that were open definitely had a very distinctive difference from the bottles that were closed. And you can see the deterioration is astonishing. And again, you can see the vein work of the leaves here, and I don't have my um, my um, my equipment so I can look at that on a closer level for the scientific observation, but that will be on the horizon. Like I said, hopefully we can take a peek at that with the year end. We'll put that on the to-do list so that way we can see the nuances of the deterioration on an up close level. So very interesting to see the difference between the leaves there. Are there any questions?